Well, yes, it was a sort of dismal January morning, and we were as busy as usual with fielding emails and phone calls to organise projects for people who need them as part of the planning process. And I remember our administrator shouting across to me that there's a lady on the phone wanted to look into digging up the remains of Richard III. And I think my initial reaction inwardly was, "Oh no, oh, we've heard it all before." Yes, people think we can just drop everything and go and do some interesting projects. But when I got talking to her, what was really interesting was she'd done her background research, well, some of it anyway, and it struck me that it would be really interesting to learn more about the Greyfriars site. Because my first excavation when I was still at school was the Austin Friars by West Bridge.
At that stage,
No.
I do recall that our then Chief Operating Officer, Andy Keeling, came to see me and said, they're wanting to dig in the Greyfriars car park. And I readily agreed, just because I thought, bit of fun. I mean, seriously, it wasn't much more than that.
Yeah.
I've subsequently, and I can't remember whether it was Andy said it or I said it, recall a conversation where somebody said the only bones they'll find will be those left in a discarded Kentucky Fried Chicken box, right? Or something. Or words to that effect. And I've used that joke quite a few times. But I mean, I blame Andy, but I think he probably blames me for being so sceptical about it.
They'd spotted the R in the car park when it was empty, and it was, I think it was more slightly a light joke at that particular point, and the story obviously becomes a lot more significant once you actually find him almost underneath the R. For posterity, he was not under the R. He was the one next door. I mean, Philippa has always talked about her feelings. The way she presents stuff is always about her feelings rather than.
Sure.
But then she also has evidence as well, and she had done her research as well. So, you get both with her basically, and that's fine. It was the type of project that worked for everybody after all. So it was precinct. Yeah. But when you looked at that precinct area, 83% of it, I think it is, was built on today and completely inaccessible and unlikely to ever be accessible because most of it is historic listed buildings on the site. And of that remaining percentage that you could look at, there's only 3 areas that are actually large enough to do excavations in. There's other little open areas, but you couldn't safely do excavations in them. So that comes down to even a smaller percentage, and ultimately the amount we excavated was just 1% of the Friary precinct.
We immediately saw, I think, as a radio station, this was going to be a huge story for us, absolutely enormous, because there would be national interest in this, and that we, of course, were on the spot and would want and would follow it with huge and particular interest. I don't think we quite realised how big it was going to be or how much we would have to work on this, but of course we were getting calls from radio stations across the country, and various people would do, who happened to be available, did an interview for them about what was going on.
Yeah.
But not only that, we